right, 8:01, Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. My name is Meredith Vaughn. I am co-chair of the National Court Reporters Foundation and very exciting to be the co-chair of the Ask Me Anything task force. My other co-chair is present with us tonight, Cindy Isaacson. I'm sure she'll give us a nice wave. Hi, Cindy. This task force of the National Court Reporters Foundation has been hard at work this year, bringing sessions to our members, addressing a variety of topics. This topic is the fourth to be held so far in our series. We have done an Ask Me Anything about what it's like to attend convention. That was where we answered questions specifically about going to Houston. And we did a session about what it's like to be an official court reporter in a courtroom, what it's like to be a freelance court reporter. And tonight, very exciting, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a captioner. And I'm going to take 2 seconds of side note to say that I've been a court reporter for 33 years. It's hard to say that number out loud. I'm just really old. 10 years as a freelance reporter and 23 as an official reporter. And while I make a verbatim record with a steno machine, I use the same tool of the trade. I have always felt that captioning is next level. It's a skill higher than what I possess, and I will fangirl every time, especially this evening with our esteemed panel of presenters that you're going to get to hear from tonight. To do it live, to do it broadcasting is just amazing to me. And, you know, I understand that they're still writing steno and I still write steno. I'm always in awe of their skill and their professionalism and where they take our career. So let me begin briefly this evening to talk about the task force members that are here. We have Rich Jermosin with us tonight. He's a member of the Ask Me Anything task force. Sorry to catch you with the drinking. We have Cindy Isaacson, I already mentioned. And then we have some members of the NCRF trustees board. Pat Graves is a trustee with us. And we have our most dedicated and fabulous Jill Parker-Landsman, who facilitates everything that we do at NCRF, and we couldn't operate without her. And she is a great asset that we highly appreciate. One of the nicest people you'd ever darn meet. Yep. So we also have a very esteemed panel of captioning presenters tonight with a variety of experiences. And we're going to take a second to introduce them all and to hear from them, to ask questions. We're going to start with hearing who they are. But before we do that, early in the evening, while we all still look cute, we want to get a picture for social media. So this is Rich's chance to get ready. Anyone that would like to turn their camera on, that maybe doesn't have their camera on, if you want your big smile on social media, here's your chance. And we'll smile in 1, 2, 3.
All right. Let me see. I'm going to do 2. All right. All right. 1, 2, 3, and then hold it just a second. And 1, 2. All right, got it. Thank you.
Don't you always regret afterwards if you don't smile for the social media picture and then you see it later and you're like, what was I doing? Oh, goodness. Okay, so starting this evening with someone that I have worked in association business with for a long time, we're going to hear from panelist Joshua Edwards. Oh, so I probably should say, this is their chance to say who they are, what they do, if they have a fun fact about them. Your introduction.
Yes, just very briefly. Hello, good evening. I'm Joshua Edwards, and I am here with my co-owner of our agency, Steno Captions, Wendy Beccarizzo. Hopefully you can see her on the screen. She made it into the session. We have co-run Steno Captions in New York City we're in our 4th year, and it's been a wonderful experience. I will say I would never want to go this alone. So I'm so grateful to have Wendy as my partner, my business partner. I am from Jacksonville, Florida, but I've lived in New York City for 15 years. I moved here with the dream of being a Broadway star, failed in that, and that is what led me to stenography, and the rest is history. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. Wendy, let's hear from you next then.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Wendy. I've been captioner for 24 years now. Well, stenographer, I should say. CART for 19 years. And fun fact is I have 3 more states to have seen all the United States.
Wow, that's outstanding. Okay, Catherine Thomas.
I'm living in Caseyville, Illinois, which is just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. I started as a freelance court reporter in 1998, and I transitioned over to CART around 2009, and am now full-time 100% since about 2011. And I do general CART jobs, online captioning, like webinars, a lot of stadium captioning. It's a lot of fun and no transcripts.
Love it. Stacy Potenza.
Hi, everyone. I am Stacy. I live in Texas right now. I grew up in Louisiana. I became a court reporter in Colorado. I made a little pit stop in Kansas, which is where I met Cindy Isaacson and really got involved with NCRA and KCRA. I've been a captioner for 20 years, which is hard to believe. I have only done captioning, so that is the extent of my career. But a fun fact is that my dad was a court reporter. He's now a captioner who works for me. My granny was a court reporter, my uncle, and 2 cousins. So there's my fun fact.
Outstanding. Alan Peacock.
Hi, I'm Alan Peacock. Excuse my voice. I caught a cold over Thanksgiving. So I am in Mobile, Alabama, and I have been reporting and captioning since 1987. I started actually captioning in 1990. So like 23 years. So anything you can think of, I've probably been there, done it, and messed it up. But I have a lot of experience, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And we will hear from Pat Graves.
Hi, I think I'm going to hold the longest record for being in the profession in total. I started in 1977 as a freelancer, and I started Caption First, my company, in 1989. We predominantly do CART, although we certainly do use encoders and do that kind of captioning. People ask me sometimes, why did you get into CART? And the reason was because I have a deaf brother, had a deaf brother, he passed on. And so I've always been really, really aware of people with disabilities and how to support them, etc. I think it is absolutely the most exciting field in the world. And a little fun fact, one time I've worked all over. One time we were in Beijing, and we got done with our work early, and they took all 140 country delegates and me and my husband on the Great Wall of China. They closed off the Great Wall of China, and we were able to walk on it with all the delegates. So that was probably the highlight of that trip for sure. Thanks.
Absolutely amazing. Wonderful. I will go back to recognize that Sandy Narub, a member of the Ask Me Anything task force, is online with us tonight. Also one of our NCRF trustees. Thank you, Sandy, for joining. So in those introductions of our panelists that you heard, I was taken aback by how modest they are, because they hold some of the most prestigious certifications that NCRA offers, and not one of them mentioned their initials. Pat Graves, FAPR, RDR, CRR, CRC. Alan Peacock, also an FAPR, RDR, CRR, CRC. Stacy Potenza, CRC, and a member of our board of directors for NCRA. Catherine Thomas, RDR, CRR, CRC, and Joshua Edwards, RDR, CRR, CRC. I don't think that any one of us takes those certifications and the work that it takes to achieve them lightly. And I also want our audience members to know that in addition to their many years of experience in the field, you know, they have certifications that they work with to back it up as well. And part of the reason why I'm so very excited tonight to hear their answers to the questions about what it is that makes captioning work, and how do they do it, and how are you successful at it. So we're going to go through a list of questions that we pre-set out. If you have more that you'd really like to hear about tonight, you can throw those in the chat box, and I'll get to any extras that I can. Also, if there are things that we do not reach tonight that you're really interested in learning about, if you would like to take tonight as a networking opportunity to reach out to anyone, we are going to have our panelists put business phone numbers and emails in the chat box. And so if you have someone that you would like to reach out to ask more questions after tonight, you'll have their contact information there. So the question we're going to start with first is, how do you prepare for a captioning job? And I'm going to call on our panelist, Catherine Thomas, to see how she prepares for a captioning job.
Depends on what the job is, first and foremost. How I prepare for carding for a student who's deaf or hard of hearing, for example, to start with, I get the syllabus for the class. I usually cover the same class throughout the semester. And a lot of the classes I've done a few times before, if they're core classes like English 101 or Chemistry 101. So over time, I've built up quite a bit of prep for that, but I always at least try and get the syllabus so I can get the class schedule. And sometimes I get PowerPoints ahead of time too. We usually ask Disability Services for that college to add us as a class member of sorts to their online platform, whether it's Blackboard or Brightspace or any of those, so we can also have more access to materials and announcements if something changes. And I do stadium captioning. So if you go to the actual baseball or football game, sometimes they have the announcements captioned there in the stadium. And I do that from home. Different from television captioning. I don't have to do all the commentary. But to prepare for those every year, I use Case Catalyst BCS. And I have a case for the particular stadium where I keep a case dictionary of local names. For example, Milwaukee, I've got local names of things that they might mention, or the weather forecasters that sometimes will pop in with a weather that's the word for the game. And then I also have job dictionaries that I have to keep up to date of each individual team, and I keep those in job dictionaries so I can keep them up to date. And I usually put the current year, I always put the current year, so that I look and I'm like, okay, I haven't done a game that the Yankees have played in since the last time was 2021 and now it's 2023. I really need to get that updated. And for that, you go online and look up the team's rosters and put them in there. Think I covered everything?
That is fascinating to me, because one of the things that so stands out about captioning to me is watching it come up, and the names and the nicknames and the sports captioning. Do you have one strokes for names, nicknames? Like when you say job dictionaries for the teams, does it include all of those extras that they're referring to the players as?
Well, in stadium captioning, it's different because there isn't any commentary to listen to. It's literally just the PA system saying to in the event of evacuation, sections 101 to 105, go down the blah, 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 or now up to bat, Christian Yelich, now up to bat, Christian Yelich. Next up to bat, Willie Adames. Next up to bat, Willie Adames. And I do make briefs for every player on a baseball team. Football has way too many people for me to come up with briefs for. But for the baseball players, I do put one stroke, because when they go through the opening roster and they whip through those things, so I do those. But there's not a whole lot of nicknames and stuff that come up when I do stadium captioning, because the stuff pre-game, they'll do a lot of presentations and things, but I usually get the scripts for those.
Thank you. So Wendy, I'm going to call on you next, and we're still with the question of how do you prepare for a captioning job?
Okay, I Google. Google has helped a lot. If I'm doing a class on photography, then I'll Google photography terms. That applies for law school, any kind of class that I'm given. I will Google and get terminology. That's if it's a class. If it's an event, they usually have an event page too. So Googling does help for that too.
Outstanding.
And a dictionary with those terms.
Great. So we'll do one more panelist on this question. Joshua, how do you prepare for a captioning job?
So I want to take a larger view of preparation and say that learning how to write any word that you would ever hear is the best preparation. And that's, of course, separate from specific preparation for a job. Google is a powerful tool. It's even if in court reporting, you get the bill of particulars or the caption, you obviously put those names in. But when I was in school, I wrote every word in the Merriam-Webster dictionary because I wanted to be able to translate as if somebody were standing over my shoulder and watching my screen. I was preparing myself to do CART before I even knew what CART was or that it existed. So it's all about preparing to be able to accurately write whatever you hear. People love to say vis-a-vis for some reason. So I have, my initial V, final F for that. Countries of the world, the continents, the major mountains. My favorite example is Mount Kilimanjaro. I get a lot of mileage out of that one for some reason. Famous rivers, and also being able to understand when somebody mispronounces a word and know, oh, they actually mean this. Like somebody said fox pearls and they meant faux French, F-A-U-X, but they pronounced it like the furry animal that runs around in a field. So preparation is ongoing. It's your knowledge base. It's your interest in the world and curiosity in language.
I love that answer. And I know that personally about you because I vividly remember we had a conversation and you said it out loud to me. How would I write Meredith in steno? And I think I should make this short, one stroke for it. I don't usually have that name. And you added my name to your dictionary. And I loved it because literally at the time I had never added a one stroke for my own name to my own dictionary. Don't know why, but you prompted me to do it. Okay, we're moving on to question number 2. How is captioning different from court reporting? And I'll call on Alan Peacock for our first answer.
A good person to answer because I'm actually still in the process of doing both. Most people pick a specific discipline and stick with it. You're just a captioner and just a CART provider or just whatever venue you're in. But I actually still do some reporting. So I'm a good person to speak to the differences. It's basically a mindset, and you have to be careful about this. When you are on the job as a reporter, you are a verbatim reporter. You're there to get every word for word, and that's your job. And it's not that it's not your job, it's also your job as well when you're captioning. But there's sort of a myth that, oh, you can drop, you can this, you really can't. It's still to be verbatim, but you do have a tiny bit of liberty to the goal is to make it make sense. Someone's going to be reading what you're saying and you want the message conveyed. So if they say today's the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, did this. If I know Vladimir Putin is not in my dictionary, I can drop it or just write Vladimir or just write Putin. I can get away with that in captioning, but I'm not going to risk it and link, is that a dictionary? I'm going to write it anyway. No, you can't. So it's just being conscious and always asking yourself the process as you're writing, is this in my dictionary? Do I know what I'm doing? Is this translating correctly? It's being conscious and aware. You have to be mindful while you write, as opposed to being, I can be in a deposition and writing and thinking of what I'm going to get by when I'm shopping later. I'm getting off, I need to get milk. I can't do that when I'm captioning. It's more mindful, if that makes any difference. So it's really a mindset is the way I would define it. That makes sense?
It makes sense to me, almost like intensity, where you're writing with intensity.
Or intent.
Okay. Pat Graves, do you have an answer for how captioning is different from court reporting?
And I just really I don't want to repeat what you said, but Alan, but really what I wrote down was for court reporting, your master, in quotes, is the record. And for captioning, your master is the consumer, because you have to have readability and accessibility and accuracy first time, all the time. So it really is just, obviously Alan and I must be cut from the same cloth, because there really are differences, and it's who drives you. And sometimes I will say to people on my team, you know, they'll either melt down because they did something, they had a wrong stroke or they didn't get it, and or they'll, you know, and I just kind of like, when you forget who you're serving, then you get into trouble. Then you're not doing a good cart job. So you need to kind of get over yourself and remember why you're there and stay in your role and do what you have to do. And so court reporters have roles and cart providers and captioners have roles, but they are, I think, driven by different consumers.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to move on. Good segue, huh? What certifications do you need to be a captioner? And I'm going to call on Stacy Potenza.
It depends on where you work. So there are some places that will say you do not need certifications, but I find that the better jobs, the better contracts, the higher paying jobs, the more demanding clients, they do look at your certifications. Certifications do matter. We do have this certified real-time captioner, and that is the minimum that's needed to be employed by the company that I am at. There are places that will employ you without certifications. Those places typically require testing. So they will require you to write for them if they don't require a certification up front, but more and more companies and contracts are requiring certifications.
And thank you. Will you expand just a little bit on the kind of company that you work with?
Sure. So I had a feeling you were going to do that to me, Meredith. So I manage accommodation services globally for JP Morgan Chase. And so we are, you know, a global financial institution, and we employ employees of all kinds. And so we actually caption over 7,000 events a year. And so we've got a global team we've got 10 captioners here in the US that are employed full-time. We have captioners that are 2 in London and 3 in Manila, Philippines. And we actually have 1 in India. And then we also use vendors to fill in the gaps here and there because of just the different volume that we have at different times of year. So this kind of fell into my lap as a really cool opportunity. One day when I posted on Facebook that I was just going to stop freelancing and go become a nurse because I really wanted benefits. And I'm like, why don't more full-time career opportunities exist for captioners? And the universe was listening and dropped this right in my lap. And so now I get to work in this really cool position and start to kind of affect change in corporate America to create more positions for accessibility service providers.
And those full-time reporters that you talked about that you work with, are they all steno writers writing in English, or are they steno writers in different languages?
At this time, we provide all services in English. The official language of the firm is named as spoken English. So all of our stenographers are English to English captioners.
Wonderful. All of that is just outstandingly amazing to me. Love it. Okay, so staying with what certifications do you need to be a captioner? And I will call on Pat Graves.
I really look for the CRC, because that tells me that that person is focused on serving people with hearing loss or people whose native language is not English. I will look at the CRR. That tells me that that person has done judicial work. They've certified themselves in that arena. It tells me that they have nerves of steel and they can keep themselves together for the testing. I think that I don't want to sound harsh, but I actually don't work with anyone who is not NCRA certified. So I will tell you that there have been many people that have gotten their certifications, because that is the only way that you can work with my company. We do actually assess everyone who does come into the company also. Almost everyone. I might have missed a few, but it is clients, my clients don't really care about CRC or CRR. They don't really, those don't really mean a lot to my clients. What means a lot is when I say everyone on my team is certified by the National Court Reporting Association. That is a requirement. That's really all I have to say. So very high level for me.
And in the operation of your company, are you interviewing and hiring frequently, infrequently? Like you have years of experience in hiring captioners?
So I have 4 staff captioners. I recently let 6 transition back into the IC world. During COVID, I needed to have the guarantee that I could serve the clients. So I took them on as full-time employees or part-time employees with the benefits that Stacy was talking about. Things have changed a little bit, and so I did not need 10 staff captioners, so I went down to 4. And so I'm constantly looking to expand my team. And so people who come to me and they want to give me time as an independent contractor, I in turn let people have jobs. They can tell me their interest and we assign them. So it's a team effort, and we have to just make sure that we cover all the jobs.
And you used a term IC that maybe some people in our audience might not be familiar with.
Sorry, independent contractor.
Okay, just
so yeah, just as freelance court reporters can be independent court reporters and work with different firms, in the captioning world, in the CART world, you can work with the different captioning firms, and so then you're an independent contractor.
Thank you very much. Panelists, anyone else have another answer for certifications? I think we can move on to the next question. Joshua.
May I just add quickly?
Absolutely.
In New York, we are not a mandatory certification state for either captioning or court reporting. And Wendy and I don't have the luxury of limiting our talent to only certified captioners. Of course, we vet them and we test them and we make sure their writing is up to par. What we do is reward people when they earn certifications. And, we always confer with each other and say this person has given us their best work. They've taken classes for us. They don't call out in the middle of a semester to go on a vacation or whatever, and we'll reward them financially for that. So in that way, we try to uphold the value of certification, but we just, we're walking a tightrope to fill the need for on-site captioning as it is.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that part. Okay, so my next question is, how is the compensation different for captioning than it is for court reporting? And I'm going to turn to Alan for that, since he has already mentioned he's doing both.
Thanks. I'm not really sure what else I can say that's different. As far as the writing, I think I addressed that.
Compensation.
Oh, compensation.
Compensation different?
Excuse me. Okay. Good question. It's actually because I do both. I can tell you honestly, it works out about the same. If you're taking a deposition, you're putting in hours and hours. You're getting dressed in the morning, going to the dry cleaners. You're getting there early. You're spending time writing. You're driving back. You're scoping. You're proofing. It's hours and hours. Exhibits, making an index, and all that adds up. And if you actually sit down and you put pencil to paper and see what your hourly wage would be, it's probably going to be about the same as it would have been as what a captioner would make. And I don't want to put out any figures out there. Can I? Should I? I don't know. No. Okay. But it's around the same. The joy is if you're a captioner and you do a job, you're done. You make this amount of money, and you may have to turn in a file. It takes a few minutes to go over your file, take out conflicts, look it over. That's it. So you're not putting as much time in. And also in reporting, you may get a windfall, which means I may get a big case as an 0-6 and 0-10, where it's a big case, and hey, for 1 month, I'm going to make an extra so much more $1,000. And that's wonderful. You're not going to get that windfall in captioning. Generally not. So there's, can you make more in reporting? Yes. But if you try to talk about an hour to hourly basis, it's about the same. Work put in, work output, money in, money out. It's about the same, is my opinion.
Thank you. Catherine, you had very animated, and I see your hand up. Go, let's hear from you.
Yeah, just he's talking about if you break down the hourly rate. I did that when I was transitioning in 2009 to 2011. I kept a spreadsheet. I think I did not count travel time because that I can't really do too much about, but the time taking the deposition, scoping the deposition, proofing the deposition, finalizing the deposition, or if I had a scopist, subtracting those monies from what I would get in return, that hourly rate versus a captioning hourly rate, even allowing for prep, because not every job is hours and hours of prep, y'all. Some jobs I don't even have prep. Some jobs I need to jump in blind because there's a captioner down or something like that. It worked out to almost exactly the same. And I have heard people on social media claim that you can't make any money doing CART. I'm here to tell you, you can make some good money doing CART. Am I rolling in it? Do I have diamonds just dripping off of me? No. But I have a house that I paid for myself. I've got everything I need. I have enough to pay for my own taxes, my own retirement. I'm a diehard independent contractor. Yes, you can make good money. You got to do good work to get the good money.
Outstanding. And for anyone in our audience that might not understand, Alan asked if he could share specific figures, and we gave him the cue that, please know we would prefer that you not do that. And that has a lot to do with antitrust laws, and as an association not wanting to violate any sort of, antitrust violation, which would be very expensive as an association to defend. So that's why we're talking in generalities, if anyone wasn't on the up and up for that. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to answer the question about compensation from our panel? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question, and we're going to talk about how do you build dictionaries and speaker designations for captioning your different captioning kind of jobs, news, sporting events, conventions, whatever your specific area of expertise may be. And I'll start with Wendy.
Hi. I use the Q&A bank since I no longer do depositions now, 19 years. I do, the Q is a professor and the answer bank is a student. So in classes, I use Q&A, but it's the professor, the student. And it's chevron, space, all caps, the professor, colon. And if I have job dictionaries for each class, and I'll put professor and their last name, make it a little more special. If I know they're not a professor, it's an instructor, whatever, last name. And then students, I've had classes where they were really small and I was able to identify each student, but that was just me being extra. That's not a necessary thing.
Thank you. Stacy, do you have an answer for this question? Building dictionaries and special things for certain arenas?
Sure. So I learned this this tip that stuck with me all along. So I build speaker IDs with what I call the OIP method. And so I will take the first initial of the first name and the first initial of the last name, or the letter P. So I will add the vowels O and I. And so for my name, if my speaker ID were Stacy Potenza, then I would write STOIP, STOIP, and that would come out as Stacy Potenza in the same way that Wendy described. And so I'll go through, and if I just have first names, then I will just do like Wendy would be WOIP, and Jill would be Joip, and Rich would be Roip, and that would just go all the way down the list. And then you get creative, you can double stroke them, you can however you want to do that. And then once you start adding in the last names, you take off the P, and so then Jill would still be Joip, but then let's see, Wendy would be Woib, and I would be Stoip, and Rich would be Roig. And so you just kind of go on down the line, because I don't have a lot of conflicts with that OI combination there. And so I'll go down my rosters, I'll go down my speaker list, and I'll add those before. And then one other tip that I have is For no speaker IDs, if I'm just using chevrons, I was trained way back when I started captioning to just use RR as my speaker ID. And so that way there was something from each bank. And so if I need to do a speaker ID on the fly, then I do R**R, and I have that defined in my dictionary as chevron, all caps on, and then I can write the name. I can write R**R Wendy, and that will make it all capped. And then I have a colon stroke, which is just, I only know my finger shape, right? So I've got my colon stroke, but then I add my colon stroke, I add a asterisk to that colon stroke, and that will turn all caps off. And so I've got a way to do speaker IDs on the fly. And so these days we're really lucky and fortunate to be on Zoom a lot of the time. And so I may not know who is going to speak, but as soon as they start speaking, their name pops up in front of me, and then I've got their name, and then I can use that speaker ID on the fly and get them with a perfect speaker ID every time, or most of the time. So that's how I do it.
And I'll just ask for one other terminology clarification, what you mean by chevron. This may be common knowledge for many of you, but somebody might not know.
So it's the greater than sign. Two greater than signs would be a chevron. And so when I very first started captioning, 2 chevrons or 2 greater than signs would mean a new speaker, and 3 chevrons or 3 greater than signs would mean a change of subject. So it could be the same speaker. And this was what I was taught in broadcast 20 years ago. Now, most of us are using speaker IDs for everything, and there are very few just generic chevron speaker IDs anymore. But that is the chevron, is when you see a new speaker, you'll see greater than signs, and then typically the name, a colon, and then your speech starts.
So now that you've said it, I'll get to you, Pat. Now that you've said it out loud, people probably recognize it from seeing it on television captioning. Pat Graves.
So, you know, I love this discussion. And a lot of captioners will cringe at this, but I do a double stroke of the first syllable of the last name. And then if they say, my name is Pat Graves, I would write Graves. My name is Graves. Now that might feel very awkward, but I did a conference, a triennial conference every 3 years. There were 436 delegates. I put all of their names in, and I sat down 3 years later, and 95% of them came up because the delegates repeated themselves. Because it is, so when someone says from the floor, you know, my name is Pat Graves, I would have an alphabetical, I like last names, so I would go by Graves. I would look in my G's, I would see Pat Graves, and I would find my steno stroke. Now you think you can't do that, but you actually can. And so I know that that is not the common way to do it, but I'm telling you, I have served people all over the world, hundreds and hundreds of people, speakers, and I've gotten their names right. So it's just a philosophy. I have seen what Stacy described. I've also, you know, that is more difficult for me to understand, and I've seen some mistakes on it. And so it's I would have to really study your your way to do that, Stacy. So thanks.
If I don't know, I'm going to write it out. If I don't know it's going to translate, I'm going to do my speaker ID on the fly every time. So I definitely appreciate your method. And those job dictionaries, they save your can. I mean, I can do a conference 6 years later, and some of those same speakers are in there. And as long as you're consistent with your theory and your method, they come up, and it's amazing.
Love it. Joshua Edwards, I'm going to come to you next for, you put a great comment in our chat box, and if you could just expand on it.
About the
Speaker
power
designation.
line? Do we
Yeah.
have another 2 hours? I can go into all the nitty gritty. But no, seriously, it's a wonderful tool where you can define, and this works in legal reporting and in captioning in any environment. You have a power defined dictionary, which is like a job dictionary that only controls the power defined box in case catalyst. So you can say SNU is going to equal in English, and you know my steno is Mr. if I'm in a deposition, or Miss if it's a deposition. And then you either steno the name if it's already in your dictionary, or you finger spell it, and then period for colon, and again, all caps on and all caps off for incorporated. And then you can select, is this probably wouldn't be a personal dictionary defined, but a job dictionary or a case dictionary. And you can do all of that from your writer. And when you get very good at it, you can actually do it while they're talking if they're not going too fast. But you do have to learn it baby steps to really master it. And when I teach, I've taught Zoom webinars on this before. I say the most important thing to learn is how to get out of power define, because if all of a sudden they start talking and you're trying to do a power define, all that steno is going into that box, not into your transcript. So for me, the easiest button in the world is just the number bar with nothing else. I just hit it like an escape button, and power define goes away, and I'm back to my transcript.
Interesting.
And my email's in the chat. If anyone on CaseCat wants to learn, I'm happy to show you.
Thank you for that. Highly appreciated. That's a good segue right now for me to mention that in the Ask Me Anything series, in addition to our topics of what it's like to be a captioner, we are going to do some with vendor training. And so, as Joshua said, it can take a really long time to come up to speed with our software and all the features and the different ones. So please be on the lookout for future sessions in the spring of 2024 that will include vendor training. And Jill has it posted on all of our social media and NCRA pages all the time, but the next Ask Me Anything session will be Tuesday, January 30th, also at 8 p.m. And it's going to be about work-life balance, the effect that mental health has on our career. February, our topic will be about the power of networking. And in March, we're going to have the topic of practicing, graduating, and earning certifications. So right now, those are all the last Tuesdays of January, February, and March, and you can pencil them in on your calendars. Next, in our captioning questions to continue, we're going to talk about what are the benefits of being a captioner. And although I like to keep it positive, sometimes there's a downside, and it's good to talk about those things. Sometimes when you know the downside going into something, then it's not really as bad as you anticipated or planned for. So Alan, do you have a question? Do you have an answer for the benefits and downsides of being a captioner?
Absolutely. There are so many benefits. I enjoy being a captioner because you have the freedom to make your own kind of schedule. You can pursue the types of programming that you like. If you're a person who loves sports, you can become an aficionado and build your reputation based on that, so that the community knows you as the best football captioner or boxing captioner or whatever. So you can find a field of expertise and you can build on that. So find your interest. And I like the fact that you can just do anything and learn. You can be available for any sort of event, whether it's sports or movies or classroom. It's an adventure, and you're always learning. One of the drawbacks, I guess, of captioning, to me, it's cyclical work. If you're not employed at a firm or an agency, it's sort of like court reporting. As they say, it's feast or famine. Sometimes this work can be that way as well. Don't give up when it's dry, because then everyone's going to be wanting you the next month. Summers are slow. Kids are not in school. There's not that much programming that's new. So it's very cyclical. So you have to learn to budget. You have to learn, especially if you're doing your own savings accounts and IRAs, and you have to put yourself on a budget. So don't just I've got so much money this month, I'm going to spend it. You have to learn to save. So it's just, even if you're doing reporting, if you're doing reporting versus official, it's the same sort of, I don't know, the same sort of situation, I guess, where you have to learn to just build your life around what you're choosing. But the benefits to me outweigh it, is the answer that I would give. The benefits of being able to choose what you want, enjoy your life, and have the time and work when you want to work.
Thank you. Pat, do you have an answer for this question to share?
I do. The benefits are really pretty much the same. You can work when you want to. You can work from home, or you can travel the world. I think I've worked in 30 different countries. It's just been an amazing career. And I think one downside is for an independent contractor, cart provider, or captioner would be that you would have to learn the different companies' formats that you work for. So that could be considered a downside. So for my company, I want first and last names in a speaker ID. Other companies, they're fine with first names. So, caption first. okay, I got to do first and last names. So that kind of thing. So that could be a downside. And I think that's why a lot of captioners only align with a few companies, because then it's easier to get their format and to get their the way they do things. But that's really no different than court reporting, I would imagine, as a freelance court reporter. So those are the things that I had jotted down that that Alan didn't mention. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Wendy next.
Hi. I love working with the deaf and hard of hearing community. They make you feel like you're a superstar. They're so grateful for what you're doing. You're making a difference in their lives. And I've had so many students as adults in university classes cry and tell me, this is the first time I've actually understood an entire class, and I'm an adult. This is the first time, and this is life-changing. And they cry, they make you cry, and you become great friends with a lot of people that you work with. That's the biggest benefit for me. It's amazing.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else on the panel would like to have an answer for benefits and downsides of being a captioner? Joshua.
If you work in educational CART as we do, it is such a privilege to have access to a free education at least in New York at some of the world's most famous universities. I'm captioning an entire law school student's career, and I was asked to caption an admissions event where one of a consumer that I'd worked with previously was in attendance, which means that person is at least considering going to law school, which means I might get to go through law school a second time for free. So I should just take the bar and be done with it.
Wow. Amazing. So that's going to segue into our question about discussing experiences with live captioning. Panelists, I'm really going to turn to you right now. I'm looking for someone who has a good story to share about a live captioning experience that maybe was something out of the ordinary. Catherine?
I saw a post on the Facebook encouraging court reporting students. A student asked, how do you handle those moments in court where things get gory or traumatizing? How do you deal with that? And I wrote an answer out and deleted it because it really wasn't germane, but somebody suggested that maybe CART is better if you want to avoid that type of material. And I just thought about the semester I had a few years ago where I sat directly next to the cadaver in the cadaver lab while my hard of hearing student was dissecting it and learning. And I mean, the cadaver was right here. I could touch it. Students were walking around with things dripping off of their tools, and I had to kind of scooch a student out of the way because it was dripping on my stuff. And that was definitely one of the most unusual jobs. It was also one of the most fascinating jobs too. But yeah, sometimes you do get some material that is a little difficult to hear, and that is something that is part of the job too, is dealing with that.
Wow. In that kind of situation, are you sitting at your steno machine or do you have it on the walking carrier?
How that particular job went, they had big like flat screen monitors on the wall beside. There were several workstations. There were like 3 cadavers in the room, and behind each table was a flat screen monitor. And I used a device called Text on Top, which is a little dongle. I put one in my computer and then one in the receiving computer, and I can put a line of captions on the top or on the bottom. And I used that so, the student could, because the student's hands were kind of dirty, and he could just kind of look up and see what the teacher was saying or what his fellow students were saying. And that's how I did that. But yeah, I was sitting down right next to the cadaver.
Wow. I think probably the most high profile, not necessarily related to captioning, but we see frequently on the floor of Congress, where the steno is standing for the proceedings because to go closer to the speaker. And I would assume that that happens more frequently in captioning, where the captioner actually has to stand, walk, or use the around the neck device. Anybody gonna confirm that for me?
Oh,
I used to, when I had a light speed, every once in a while I'd get a job, like a tour. I did a tour of a museum. I did a tour of the sports arena for one student where I had, it's called connected desk, and I could fit my light speed flat on it. But I no longer use the light speed, unfortunately. And I really haven't had any jobs that I need to do that in a long time.
Great. Okay, so our time is winding down, and we're going to move on to a question about FCC rules as it relates to captioning and regulations that affect you. And I will turn to Pat Graves.
okay. So when I prepared this, I only picked out 2 highlights, and I know that Joshua's going to fill in the blanks, and so we'll work in tandem on this one. So I am so focused on my deaf consumers, and a lot of times the clients will say, yeah, but I don't have to do that. I don't have to provide services to deaf people, and so what I have handy is the ADA, the people with disabilities, I just forgot what
American.
Thank you, Americans with Disabilities Act. Thank you. I had a little brain failure there. And so Title III of the ADA basically says if anyone has an event where the public is invited, they are required to have some kind of accessibility. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to have captioning, but they have to have some kind of accessibility. So I kind of use that. I never use it as a heavy stick. But I just have that in my back pocket if ever anyone says, yeah, but I don't have to do it, even though they're inviting the public in. I do know that. And the other thing, because of the post-production side of my company, I know that the FCC has told us that it takes an average person 2 seconds to read 32 characters. That's why if you watch the TV news, the lines are 31, 32 characters long, and they should be up there about 2 seconds. So that's the extent of my knowledge that I can share right now. So Joshua, I bow to you now.
Well, I'm no expert, but thank you for that. That's interesting history. And the approach that I want to take with the FCC is the same thing that I talk about with written knowledge test preparation. I get the question all the time, what do I study? And the NCRA has a document, it's called the Job Domain Analysis, and that's something like that. And it has things like Black's Law Dictionary, Gray's Anatomy, the tax code, about 30 different topics that people go to school for years to study any one of them. So what it really comes down to is, again, like I said, with vocabulary development, our individual curiosity in a topic. So with the FCC, they mandate 4 things related to captioning. They have to be accurate, synchronous, complete, and properly placed. And so if you think about, well, accurate, people say, oh, I have 100% accuracy. If you wrote the first sentence and you dropped the last 99% of the dictation, you had 100% accuracy, but you dropped too much. So that's why they say they also have to be complete. So what I'm going to do is, just because of time, put in the chat a link to the FCC's page on disability issues guides. And as it relates to test preparation, there is a gold mine of information in here, not just for passing the RPR written knowledge test, but also, about 30% or so of the written knowledge test is related to technology. And a lot of that will come from this. A lot of that could come from the bylaws. Well, not technology specifically, but we have to constantly be scouring for sources of information that bolster our understanding of the field. And in this list that I just put, there is closed captioning on television. There's a PDF. There's closed captioning display requirements for equipment. So you might see a test question that talks about that very issue. Well, how would you have a knowledge basis to answer the question correctly unless you've read it and somehow come across that issue? Video relay service is the last one on the list. What is that? Well, if you don't know what it is and then you read this, now you go from not knowing what it is to at least having an understanding. So that's just a very broad overview of being curious. And if we hear about something like the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, what is that? What does that say? Maybe actually take the time to go read it. When we had our New York State conference, I talked about the history of court reporting since Dom Tercey was no longer with us. So I handed out copies of the Constitution, and I pointed out, look how small this thing is. It's actually it can fit in your pocket. It's fewer than 4,000 words. Take the time to read it and understand it. And, you know, some of it's a little dense and Congress shall not apportion, blah, blah, blah. But some of it is directly relevant to the way we live our lives and our rights and so forth. So it's the same kind of focused interest in the world of captioning as it relates to the FCC or the ADA. I hope that has given some guidance on that.
Yes, and thank you for the resource. That's amazing. We're going to go with our last couple minutes. How do you synchronize captions with spoken words and sounds? And I know Joshua just got to speak, but he had asked to answer on this one also.
Well, I think I took it in a different direction. I thought you meant in live events. I think everybody else sounded like they were talking about post-production. I don't do post-production. I don't have the patience. I can't stand it. When somebody says I want a time-stamped video, I'm like, okay, go find a company that can do that. That's great. But what I wanted to say was some people caption with a delay so that the translation comes out correctly. I've gotten a lot of thank yous from students and consumers because I don't have a delay. And so does that mean that sometimes you'll see a little raw steno before I attach the suffix? Yes, but it comes out immediately and they love it. So my personal bent is that the translation should be immediate as long as it's clean.
Wonderful. Panelists, any last answers that you'd like to get in before I close out? Okay, I just want to thank all of our audience members for taking the time out tonight to hear about captioning. I immensely thank our panelists for volunteering their time to present and to answer these questions this evening. And as we wrap up on Giving Tuesday, I did want to say if anyone has it in their heart or wallet to support the National Court Reporters Foundation, you can donate. You can donate very easily by texting Guardians to 41444. Obviously, there's all sorts of links on social media if you prefer to do it online. But every dollar that NCRF receives, we work really hard to put to good use. And part of that is bringing you events like Ask Me Anything about captioning. So that being said, I'm going to close off for this evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I hope I see you for our next event, Tuesday, January 30th. And I wish you all a blessed, happy, healthy holiday season. Good evening.